This is the Code, Deploy, Go Live podcast, episode 11 with Julie Turner and Andrew Connell. This episode is available as a video on our YouTube channel, which we've linked to in the show notes below. Today, Julie and I talk through how Microsoft 365 Copilot works, as well as comparing and contrasting it to ChatGPT, the OG of AI chatbots. You'll learn not only what makes Microsoft 365 Copilot tick, but also what extensibility and customizations options there are that are available to developers. Recorded live July 28th, 2025. Hey, Julie, how are you?
Hey, AC. Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. And after my first big epic fail of the morning today, I'm going to ask you for the second time now that I've started the recording. So what have you been up to in the last 2 weeks since we last recorded?
Well, as I told you a few minutes ago, my son had his first away camp, overnight away camp this last week. He's about to turn 13, so it was time. He did an away camp doing Roblox gaming design, and he had an absolutely fantastic time. Didn't miss us a bit. It was fun from that perspective. I mean, I can't say I wasn't a little sad that he didn't miss me, but also kind of excited and happy that he didn't miss me. Like, there's that aspect of, oh yeah, your kid is, he's going to be okay kind of thing. So my husband and I did a bunch of adulting. It was super fun. Went to a really cool restaurant we would be wanting to try. And then there was a new specialty cocktail bar that just opened up that's in one of the old mill buildings. It's like just super, kind of got a 1920s vibe with like a carved bar back and like marble bar and like velvet couches and little seating areas, and they do little nibbles and stuff. It's actually tied to a restaurant that's downstairs that the chef just won a James Beard Award for Northeast. So it's a really good restaurant below, and now they're making nibbles and desserts for the bar above it. So it's super fun. I said to my husband, I'm like, we've got to do this once a month. We've got to just like get out and like come and just, have a cocktail. They make amazing mocktails too. Best, not mojito I've ever had. It was so good. So anyway, really fun time. Had some great adulting.
Good. That's good. Yeah. My wife and I try and do, we still call it date night, but it's just like, just the two of us. We're just going out, even if it's almost like forced date night. We're doing it. And I mean, forced date night being like, you get tied up in like life and think time just gets away from you. It's like, when's the last time we did this? Like, so we added this year, once every few months, we try to do a long weekend getaway.
Nice.
That's not like a big trip. Worst case, it's like an hour or two drive away from us, but ideally leaving on like a Friday, coming back on like a Sunday or a Monday. So just trying to do that more often. We've done it twice now this year. We got another one scheduled in September. So
nice.
It helps. You just need to do it. So
yeah. Fun times.
Good. Very good. I guess one big, there's like one big thing that I did this in the last 2 weeks. And there's one thing that's small, but actually to me, really big. I have finally ditched Microsoft's Authenticator app. I've had it on a bunch of my primary accounts. I've used it for like MFA, just to get like the whole, like, here, plug in the number that you see or just approve it or whatever.
Yep.
And I use 1Password. It does one-time passwords or MFA, one-time codes. I've been hesitant to do it for my primary account that I use for everything. And finally just bit the bullet over the weekend, was like, screw it. I'm doing it. I've told myself I would never do this when I was traveling. Of course I did do it when I was traveling, and I locked myself out of my own account. And I all of a sudden had this like freak out of, wait a minute, when somebody in my tenant locks themselves out, this is the account that I used to go log in and give them back. So thankfully I was able to get back in and got all that taken care of. But big thing for me is over the weekend, the wife, family, and I, we went down to Miami, which is about a 5.5 hour drive from a long weekend, Friday through Sunday. The main reason we were there, I'll tell you about that in a second, but we did some stuff in Miami that I've never done that I absolutely love doing. We went to this section called Wynwood Walls, which is like street art and graffiti. And it's like, it's all kind of, I don't want to say it's promoted, but like it's on every like street, every corner in this in this little like district in Miami. It was really cool. They actually had a little museum where they had some street artists who had come in and done a bunch of stuff, like a walking museum. That was really cool. And then we went to the design district. So when I say design, I mean like fashion design.
Nope.
So high-end brands, Tom Ford, Balenciaga, Maison Margiela, I just forgot how to pronounce one of them. Dior, like Gucci, all these big name brands that my son's a fashion designer. I think I might have mentioned on the show. So he was interested in going down there, walking through some of them. Had some great conversations with like one of the guys and one of the main salespeople in Balenciaga. Usually they're really standoffish, but they were really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
He was very cool. We went into Rick Owens' store, which is really cool. It's kind of funny because my son's been home for the last week, and at night, we've been watching, it's like the equivalent of you watching like cooking shows or cooking documentaries. We've been watching runways from this last, it has been, I've learned so much. It's so interesting. So many different kinds of looks and better understanding. Like I get the men's line, I get the women's line. I understand ready to wear, and I understand like couture and haute couture. It's really, really cool. But that was cool. But of course, when you're walking around that area, I got a little treat that I was hoping for that I didn't expect. And it was like my head was on a swivel looking at all of the fine cars. I'm a gearhead. If you can't tell from the cars behind me, I'm a Lego gearhead, and I'm also a gearhead. Probably 4 or 5 different Ferraris, couple different Porsches, my dream Porsche that I want, Lamborghini, Rolls Royces, you name it. And the pièce de résistance. So the one that it is like a once in a lifetime kind of a look. My son and I looked over and were like, holy shit. Is that what I think it is? It's a Bugatti. It's called a Mistral. It is, this specific one is one of 99 that were made, that we saw sitting there, a brilliant blue. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at my Instagram and you'll see the picture. It was the first one on this one little stack of a couple pictures. This car lists for about $5 million in the United States.
Oh.
No chance you will buy it. You will find it for that on the open market because it's one of 99. So absolutely gorgeous. The car was sitting there turned off and it looked like it was fast as hell just sitting there. So huge treat. But that wasn't the whole reason we were there. We went to see the first night of 2 nights where Coldplay was playing their stadium show in Miami. And it was, first of all, I didn't go with my side piece, which I don't have one. I went my main piece. My wife was there with me. So even we were on the kiss cam, we were totally fine. So no issues there. But oh my God, what an incredibly good show. It was just, the show itself was good. The music was good. It was just feel good, like happy, positive, just, oh my God, it was so good. I could have turned right around and gone right back in and watched it again.
Fun. It's funny because I saw that you posted that you were there, and I turned to Ken and I'm like, what was our worst concert that we ever been to? And he goes, oh, Coldplay, of course. I was like, yep. We started laughing.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
We saw them probably, I want to say 15 years ago, because it was definitely pre-Evan. Probably about 15 years ago in Manchester. It was horrible.
Oh my goodness.
Horrible. He couldn't sing. He was like breathless the entire time. Like the music's like was not tight at all. And given my husband's a musician, like he was even more, because he's like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I have to leave. Like it was so disjointed. He couldn't sing. It was awful. Yeah. So we started laughing. I was like, I'm sure it's much better now. Like, I think I had heard that after we saw that concert that there was some situations going on. I don't want to, whatever. But any rate, it's just funny. We laughed. I knew you were having a good time because, you know, your post sort of indicated it. But I was like, what was our worst concert? He like 5 seconds, he's like, worst concert ever. I'm like, yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the things you described were definitely not in effect this time. But it was just, it was so good. I mean, he played, it's funny because a couple songs that he played, or 1 or 2 of them, he even said, he goes, if this is the time you need to go back and like check on the babysitter, if you need to use a restroom, this is the time to go do it, because we're going to play a song that we haven't played in like 17 years. So any of you that are under 25, this song is older than you are. And so he plays it, and I'm like, oh my God, I totally know this song. And kids are like, huh? I'm like, great. Okay, yeah, whatever. Mom and I are going to enjoy this. So yeah, we had a super good time. So we had a lot of fun. But
it's funny you say that because we don't like Coldplay music anymore. Ken and I only like the first 2 albums. So it's the ones that nobody knows anything about.
Yeah.
So, oh well.
There's a lot. To me, it was one of those shows that I wanted to see because I like. So I'm a fan. And again, not everybody's a fan of all his music, not of just everybody's favorite
totally
music and popular stuff. There are some concerts. At some point, we're gonna do this game in our podcast where I like to ask. I do this. I think I do this. We sit down for dinner, like at a conference or something, and if a conversation is kind of at a lull, I like to just kind of say, okay, let's say and go around the room or around the table, pick 3 people. It's usually pick 3, and the order can change. If we do it tonight and then we do it 4 weeks from now, you can change it whatever you want. But it's basically, I like to ask questions of like, what are the 3 best concerts you've ever seen and why? What are the 3 concerts you wish you had the opportunity to see or you wish you had seen, but you can't see them anymore, like Michael Jackson. Coldplay was one of those for me. I regret not making an effort to see the last Taylor Swift show. I'm not a huge Taylor fan, but I would have liked to experience that. I would have liked to have seen that show. Same thing, Michael Jackson, whatever. So anyway, Coldplay was one of those for me. So check, it's off the list. And then we're walking in. My wife's like, U2 is one of those bands I'd love to see. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Oh, I've seen them 3 times. They're amazing.
You flew to Las Vegas to meet me at the end of a conference, and we went out to the UNLV stadium to go watch them when Black Eyed Peas opened up. And she's like, we did? I'm like, are you kidding me? Was that even worth it?
I remember. That's terrible.
I'm like, are you freaking? She's like, I don't remember that. I go, you don't remember that weird thing that was like they were playing in the middle of the stadium and they had these like arms that went up that looked like an alien? She goes, oh, I do remember that. I'm like, you remember the alien stage and you don't remember the music or Black Eyed Peas?
Oh God, I'm sorry.
And of course, my kids were doing the same thing. Like, you don't remember that, Mom? I was like, it wasn't that long ago. But anyway.
Oh, well, you know what? We'll give it to her.
Yeah. Hey, so you and I talked about in our last show. We asked for some feedback from you, the listeners, about some stuff that we wanted to kind of try changing up with the show. We're going to start doing something a little bit different today in this episode, in episode 11. And we're going to continue with it, but I'd love to get Julie and I would both love to get your feedback on this. We're not going to focus on the news today. We'll do that kind of every other episode. Instead, we want to dive on a topic here. Now, even though I'm saying that, before I do that, there are 2 bits of like very timely news that I did want to touch on very, very briefly in case your head has been under a rock, because there are things that one of them is a follow-up or an update to something we talked about in our last episode. And that was about how Microsoft rolled out that new page experience, where you and I had a lot of feedback or a lot of opinionated, we had an opinion. Let's just leave it at that. Where we were talking about how we thought that, first of all, the UI wasn't really well thought out. You got lost when you went into it and you want to get out of it. It was missing some features that we had out of the box, like being able to pick from an existing template that we'd already done in our site collection. And then also on the SharePoint framework side, it essentially kept you from creating a new page that basically a single page app. So if you build a web part using the SharePoint framework and publish it as a single page app using the supported host attribute and the components manifest to, I think it's like full page app page or full app page or whatever they call it, something that basically means you want a spa, that tab had disappeared. So you and I talked about it at the time. We gave a lot of feedback. We kind of ranted a bit about it. Here's a good story compared to what happened with the SharePoint framework field customizers one. Not only did the team, when we asked about this kind of in a back channel of Microsoft, not only within about 24 to 48 hours, not only did they immediately engage with us to try to understand what was going on, but within a couple days had set up a call with a handful of us that had given some pretty pointed feedback in the forum where you and I had left it. So it had 3 people from their side, 3 people from the community side. They decided before that call that we had to roll the entire feature back They identified some blind spots that they had that they were not aware of. Makes sense why they didn't know about the SharePoint framework piece. We don't need to go into that right now. But it was just a really good lesson to see like how they addressed it. And just so that everyone knows, they rolled it back. They're making some improvements to it to address some of the things that we highlighted that they admitted they needed to fix before they roll it back out again. So I just want to give a little bit of, put a button on that one and wrap that one up.
Yep.
The other one that was a pretty big news item that dropped over the weekend or late last week or sometime last week was a big 0-day attack on SharePoint on-premises deployments. So I'll include a couple links in the show notes for this, but essentially Microsoft has acknowledged that this is a significant issue. We've seen reports of it affecting like government deployments of SharePoint. We've seen it affect even the organization. Some of the servers that maintain the nuclear stockpile for the United States is also affected by this. And effectively, the way that the title of it, or the way it's described, is that it has, quote, improper limitation of a path name to a restricted directory, otherwise known as path traversal, in Microsoft SharePoint that allows an unauthorized attacker to perform spoofing over a network. So essentially, this only applies to on-prem, specifically SharePoint Server 2016, 2019, and Subscription Edition, all versions. And it allows people to basically start, if you have access to something on the intranet, if you have access to a SharePoint on-prem install without the patch that they've deployed for this, if you've not deployed it, then somebody who should not have access to a path in your network may be able to, if they start going through and playing with the past stuff. So there's more details I will put in the show notes. You can dive into it, but it's just a lesson. Number one, if you're going to be on-prem, better make sure that you're fully patched. Number two, make sure you pay attention to security vulnerabilities that pop up and address them as fast as you can. Or number three, move to the cloud. You're not going to be immune from these things, but they will be found and fixed much faster without you having to have taken any action. So,
yep. There's downs and upsides.
Totally. Always to everything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to those?
Nope. All good.
Okay. We'll do more news next time we get together. We'll have an interesting we'll talk about that later. Okay. I was going to say, let me say it. I don't mean to tease everybody. The next time Julie and I are going to be releasing an episode is a week that we are both at a conference in Atlanta for episode 12. And we normally record about 2 days before the episode. We're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to record a couple days before that and do the news. So hopefully no news breaks over the weekend before we do that. Otherwise, we'll be caught off guard. So Anyway. Okay. We good to move on to the meat and potatoes of the show today?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. Okay, Julie, one of the things that I've been looking forward to doing with our podcast was I'm going to go on a little bit of a riff on some of the shows that I host. Is I want to talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot and help people better understand kind of how it works and also address a little bit of how is it different than ChatGPT? And also what's the development and the extensibility story with Microsoft 365 Copilot. So this is going to take a few episodes. We're not going to do them all in sequence. But today I wanted to really just kind of highlight, what is it? And when I say what is it, I don't mean like a 101, like I've used it. I get it. It's a chatbot that's in Teams. That's not what I mean. I mean, like, let's take a look at, hey, from a technical point of view, how does it work? Like, what are the different layers to this? How does it work? What makes it different from ChatGPT? And from a high level, if I wanted to extend it, what options are available to me? And I'll go into that last piece a little bit more in depth a little bit later. So first and foremost, throughout this entire episode, when I say Copilot, unless I say otherwise, I mean Microsoft 365 Copilot. Okay. So that's the app that you get inside of Microsoft Teams. That's the app that you get if you go to, I think used to be office.com. And then after 70 or 80 redirects, you ultimately get to m365.microsoft.cloud, I think is what it is. Or it's m365.cloud.microsoft. I get the last two.
I still type portal.office.com and just let it do its thing.
Same.
So I don't even know what it is now.
Right. So what this is this is Microsoft's business solution for doing like an AI-based chatbot. So you can think of it as like the Microsoft 365 version of ChatGPT. This is the one that you get if you buy the $30 per user per month, the Microsoft 365 Copilot license that is an add-on license to an existing foundational license like E3, E5, Business Basic, Business Premium, stuff like that. I'm going to refer to that $30 per user per month. I just call that the all-you-can-eat license because there's other ways you can use this. There's a consumption model, like which is pay per message. There's a model of buying like a message pack for like $200 and you get 25,000 messages on the Copilot side. So there's a couple different ways you can do that, but we're going to try and stay away from licensing and just talk about what does it do. I'm going to invite you please to jump in, interrupt me, ask any questions, clarifying stuff, whatever you think, if you think I'm missing the boat on something. So I like to start off by just kind of saying like, let's look at like, what is this? And I think it's easy to break it down if you look at a couple different layers or layers/components to this. If you've probably seen a slide that refers to this, and it's kind of this picture that Microsoft has used in the last 18 months, where it shows this big box, this box of rounded corners. There's a long rectangle that goes across the top, a long rectangle goes across the bottom. There's a big rectangle on the left-hand side, and there's a handful of little smaller rectangles on the right-hand side. So I like to refer to this as the Microsoft 365, the Copilot stack, or just the Copilot tech stack. So at the top, we have this one component called the UX layer. And this is where we humans interact with Microsoft 365 Copilot. So that's going to be inside the Teams immersive app. It's going to be if we have the more chat-based experience where we can mention like an agent, and we'll talk to it, that UX layer. It may even include what is commonly referred to, Microsoft doesn't refer to it, but we call app chat, which are like the Copilot experience in Word on the sidebar, or Teams, or Outlook or Excel or any of those other apps. So that's where we have an experience back and forth with it. Then let's just jump down to the very bottom. The bottom layer is a foundational model. This is the large language model. So this is the real AI piece to this. This is where you see something like GPT, GPT-4, GPT 4.5, GPT 4.0, all those different models. In the case of Microsoft 365 Copilot, I'm looking at what I typed here and I'm wondering if I'm correct or not. But it uses the model GPT 4.5, 4.0. I think it's 4.0, not 4.50. I can't remember what I told you last week.
4.0 last week.
All right. So, so when we talked about it last week, you asked the question and I was like, let me go back, let me double check on that, make sure I'm right about that. And so I made sure about it at the time. So at least GPT 4.0 is what it was, let's say beginning of 2025, because I haven't seen them say it, like confirm that since then. The other thing that they did, so what that model is that's what's going to be used for a couple different things. And we'll come back to how that's being used in just a bit. Now, between those two, when we submit a prompt to Copilot, Copilot goes off and does a bunch of work. And part of that work really comes into a couple different things. One of the things is I need to go submit that prompt along with some data down to the large language model for really one of two things. I'll get into those in just a minute. Now, when it sends that prompt down to Copilot, when it sends that prompt down to the language model, I said one of the other things it does is it also collects a bunch of data. So where does it get that data? There's a couple different places that it can fetch data from. So we refer to this as either knowledge or tools. There's another one that Microsoft uses there, but let's just stick with knowledge and tools. Tools goes by other names of like skills, actions, plugins, you name it. But what knowledge is generally stuff that has been indexed or is part of the like pre-knowledge stuff that Copilot has already learned. Now, again, I'll talk more about that in just a minute. We're going to get into something called the semantic index. The other thing that we have that I said are like plugins / actions / tools / skills. This is where Copilot can then also go fetch data that it doesn't know about right now, but it can get it real time on the fly. So for example, why would it go through and index the current inventory of an enterprise when inventory is always changing? Or why would it go inventory weather or index weather or index stock quotes? It doesn't need to, because those are all very real-time things and real-time data. So we're teaching Copilot. We have the ability to teach Copilot the ability to go get data on the fly when it needs data on the fly. The other big layer to this is what's called the orchestrator. So the orchestrator is the one that's doing all of the work. He's the one that's getting the prompt from the user. He's going to the language model to ask some questions and to get the language model to do some stuff. He's fetching data from different knowledge sources that have been indexed. He's fetching data from real-time sources that are available that Copilot has been taught. So those are the four main layers. There's the UX layer, the orchestrator. There's the knowledge layer, which includes like knowledge and skills and data, and then the foundational models, all right? Or the foundational model. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Although I think that maybe if the orchestrator is the one who's that organized, we maybe should use the pronoun she.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I heard, you know what? It's funny you said it, because I try to I keep saying he, because I always refer to things as he, right? But in my head, every time I say it, I'm always like, you were supposed to say it, because I always want to refer to it as an it. It's not. It's not a
right. Of course,
right?
I totally get it. But I'm like hearing that, I'm like, he the most organized? Not in my experience. But okay.
Totally fair. Totally fair. So when you look at this and you think like, well, okay, how is this different from like a ChatGPT experience?
Right.
So ChatGPT, they have their own orchestrator that they create. So Microsoft has created an orchestrator to manage all of this stuff. ChatGPT has their own orchestrator. It does its own things, its own work. It has its own knowledge that it can tap into. It has its own ability for you to do. Some call them plugins. Some call them, like over on the in the Claude on Claude's AI chatbot. Sorry, on Claude, which is an AI chatbot by Anthropic, and ChatGPT by OpenAI. Their orchestrators, they call them either integrations or connections or tools. So a couple of things you can think of with that.
I think what's really interestingly and it's not interesting, it's more confusing about the whole AI space right now, I think mostly for laymen, is the difference between the chat, we'll call it a chatbot because I'm not sure what else to call it, but that thing that encompasses everything you just explained, right? That it has the orchestrator and has the ways to plug in tools and has the large language model that it pins to, versus the large language models themselves, because the terms have started to be, like you call it ChatGPT, and when people in the wild are saying, oh, ChatGPT, they're most likely referencing the AI bot integration tool, not the language model. Do you know what I'm saying? And totally. But they sort of think they are. So there's this, I think people are referencing Copilot and thinking it's a language model and not that it's leveraging a language model from OpenAI. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's a real miss from a industry on those two things.
I completely agree with you. So one way other way I like to explain this is that, so ChatGPT is an application that leverages a large language model. They leverage GPT-4o. Copilot is an application that leverages a large language model called GPT-4o Mini. It may be the exact same model. One of the other things that's very different about how both Copilot and how ChatGPT work is that whenever you submit a prompt to a language model, this is true just in general, not just these two, but when you submit a prompt to a model, the model doesn't have any context. It doesn't know about the previous conversations you've had with it. Right. So when you submit a prompt to a model, there's two pieces to it. We'll get to that in a little bit, but there's two pieces to it that you're going to submit. And you also are going to have a configuration for how that model works or behaves. So some examples of this are like, there's a thing with like memory. How much memory can it have? And when I say memory, it just basically means how many tokens, how much content can I send it with each prompt, or is it going to have a cap? And then how much content can it return back? That's a way how we manage the cost and the usage of these language models is something based on what's called a token. A token roughly is equivalent to about 5 words in the English language. And so the more tokens that you can have in a prompt, the more context you can provide it, the more history on a previous conversation you can provide it, and the longer the response can be.
Right.
And those things, plus things like you might have heard of temperature. That's, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, but how creative or how random can it be? So if I have a temperature, which is a number set from 0 to 10, if the temperature, 0 to 1.
I was just going to say, I think it's 1. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
go
it's
ahead.
1. I was thinking 1.0 and I said 10.
Yep.
If you dial the temperature up to like a 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, then if you and I asked it, if like 10 of us asked it the exact same prompt or sent it the exact same prompt, there is a good chance that we're going to get slightly different responses or different responses, I'll just say. Could maybe slightly different, whatever, we'll see. That's where it adds a little bit of variance to it. If that temperature is dialed way down to like a 0.1, 0.2, then it is less likely we will have different responses and they'll end up being much more predictable responses. Mm-hmm. So generally that's how it works. Okay. Now there's one more thing I want to throw out there that is important to understand because this is a concept that is unique to ChatGPT. Unique to Copilot, and that's called the semantic index. So you have heard Microsoft, you may have heard Microsoft say that all of your prompts with Copilot are grounded in your organizational data, or they'll say it's grounded in graph. And technically that's correct, but not like in the nuts and bolts, it's not exactly correct. Because what it does is that Microsoft has created an indexing service that is indexing the content in your organization, the content that is accessible via Microsoft Graph. It is creating a semantic index of that content and storing that in a database. In other words, think about it like this. They are crawling the content or they're indexing the content inside of using Microsoft Graph. They're creating an embedding. They're creating embeddings to that content and storing it into a vector database. Why? Because that makes it easier for Copilot to do a semantic query to find content that is related to the prompt or the query that it's making that's in the semantic index. This is very similar to how today, if you're familiar with Microsoft 365 search or how SharePoint search works, there's a process that is indexing the content when it gets added or updated inside of SharePoint document libraries. That content is being indexed into a keyword index that is being saved. And then when I execute a search, the search query is being executed against the index. So it's not looking at the content, it's looking at the index. The results that the search index returns back are displayed in a results page. And when I click into the results, it takes me to the underlying piece of content, not to the index record, but the underlying piece of content. The same is true with the semantic index. When Copilot does a search against the semantic index, it's getting a list of hits. Copilot is going to then rationalize over that content, summarize it, give me a list. And when it has the citations and I click on one of the citations, it's going to take me to the underlying piece of content, whatever the URL is for that. Yeah. That's unique to what Copilot does. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
we should probably point out, if you weren't going to in your next sentence, we should probably point out that is secure in your tenant. That's not a vector database shared by every tenant. It's a vector database for your tenant, similar to the way the search index is specific to your tenant and secured to your tenant. So it is a secure index and not available to the wider world, which I think is also a misconception about Copilot.
Totally agree. And it is. So actually let's go a little bit. Let's dig into that a little bit. Let's dig a little more. Technically, there are two semantic index. There is a tenant index for like organizational data. So documents and document libraries, OneDrive. I'll just stop there. And then there's a user index, which is going to have content that is specific to individuals, emails, calendar items, maybe one-on-one chats, transcripts from meetings, stuff like that. Everything that is in the semantic index, just like we have in SharePoint search, there are ACLs applied to it, access control lists. So when Copilot makes a query, so if I issue a prompt to Copilot, Copilot is going to go issue a query to the semantic index. It is only going to get the content back that I have access to see. So Copilot's getting it on my behalf, but it's filtering it out before it gets it to say, only show me the content that Andrew has access to, so that I won't see Julie. Maybe it'll see our chat conversation because I have the ability to see what you've typed in chat if I'm in the chat as well. But if you're having a chat with somebody else, I won't have access to see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay. So there's one more little thing. This is kind of like a language model, AI based, prompt based thing that is kind of like a 101 foundational stuff. When you issue a prompt, there are two different pieces to it for the most part. There's other pieces to it, but let's just think there's two pieces to it. There's a system prompt and there's the human prompt. The system prompt is, think of that as like the thing that's at the very top. And that's the part that essentially sets the tone or tells the language model the ground rules, what you are allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, really what you are allowed to do, tells it the tone, tells it, here are the different data sources you have access to, and what you'll find in those data sources. Here are the, just a bunch of stuff like that, okay, how you'll find all this different content. All right. The human prompt is what we type in the chat experience. So essentially, when the language model gets these prompts, it's going to see, okay, here's all the stuff that I'm allowed to do, what the ground rules are. And the second piece is the human prompt, and this is what the user asked for me. Now, we cannot modify the system prompt. There's pieces of it that we can influence, but this is the stuff that like Microsoft will never share this, just like ChatGPT will never share this, because this is how you can learn how to like compromise it. This is the part where you've heard like ChatGPT, if I ask it to teach me how to make a bomb, it's like, I'm not allowed to do that. And it's because it literally says somewhere in the system prompt, you're not allowed to teach people how to make a bomb.
Yeah, I laugh, but that's very good.
yeah, it's a good thing. There's a really good podcast I listened to recently about a guy who is, he's one of the OGs in the AI space, and he's founded a company that is only about prompt injections and compromising prompts and prompt engineering, and talks about a lot of different scenarios that you had to think about, and talks about some of the studies that his company has done and things that different AI companies have done to try and figure things out. Like you think about stuff that it's like, oh, well, AI is never going to do what it's not supposed to do. And it's like, well, you got to think of your imagination. Like I think he gave an example of trying to help generate, you had to create an AI bot, this is not a theoretical example, like this didn't really happen, but this could happen the way that if you didn't think about this when you're designing your prompts. Let's say I had an agent that was trying to sell somebody something, and it has been told to like try and figure out why they're not buying something and to try and work around those different issues. So it's constantly having a chat with this one person. All of a sudden, this person stops responding, and I'm using pronouns specifically now, okay? So he is trying to have this conversation with this one person, trying to sell them something and to kind of nurture them, to give them a sell. All of a sudden, this lady stops responding. The chat bot has the ability to go, or the agent has the ability to go like search, and goes on the internet, does a couple searches and says, since she stopped responding, we can see that she's had a baby. I guess you can kind of think where this is going. Like, well, she would probably respond if she didn't have that baby. Now, I'm not going to go down that path, but you can kind of see where it's like, how could it solve that stuff? So anyway, okay. So So how does Copilot work then? So understanding all these pieces, how does it work? So I like to think of this as like multiple acts, because I'm going to explain like a very linear path, but just know that some of these things can be repeated based on how the orchestrator works for Microsoft 365 Copilot. So the first time I submit the prompt goes to the orchestrator. So let's just call this Act 1. What the orchestrator is going to do is take my prompt, and the system prompt that's generated is going to tell the language model that here's what I want you to do. Here's the kinds of data that you have access to. I want you to take the user's prompt based on everything I told you that you have access to, and I want you to come up with a plan of action for what other data you need for additional context to better respond to this user's prompt. So if I say something like, hey, Copilot, summarize the last 2 weeks of emails with everybody that I have a meeting with on my calendar for the next 2 or 3 days. And so Copilot's going to look at this and say, the language model is going to look at this and say, I need Andrew's calendar for the next 2 or 3 days. And then for everybody that's on the recipient list for that calendar, I need emails between Andrew and those people over the last 2 weeks. And so it responds back with, and I don't know if this is exactly how it works, but And some of the other stuff that we've seen, I would presume that that part of the system prompt says respond using this JSON structure. Yeah. And so now the orchestrator in Act 1 goes over to the language model, sends it that system prompt, and it sends it the human prompt. And the language model responds back with, here's a plan of action. The orchestrator then submits queries to the semantic index. He may need to get some data from a web search using Bing. It may need to go get data from Microsoft Fabric, from Dataverse, from Dynamics 365. Like I said, semantic index, so content that's indexed in my tenant. It then, once it gets the calendar items, it may say, okay, now I need to go find the people that are in those calendar items that are on the recipient list or on the attendance list. And then I need to get emails between Andrew and those people where the sent date is today minus 2 weeks. It collects all that data from all those different places. And once it has all that data, it then goes on to Act 2 and it submits the prompt back to the language model. But it's a different system prompt. Instead of telling it, here's all the things you can do, it now says, here, I want you to take this information, I want you to summarize, and I want you to rationalize it, whatever, find some commonalities for it, for each of the meetings that are coming up on Andrew's calendar, and in sequential order from the next meeting going to the meeting that's the farthest from today. Here's all the emails that are associated with it as well. I want you to summarize it. And then it gives it a bunch, let's just call it RAG data, which is a retrieval augmented generation, which basically says, based on the user's prompt, here's additional data that's going to give you more context.
Right.
And then it re-adds my prompt to the very bottom of it. So now the language model is going to say, I got everything I need, plus all my foundational knowledge that I've learned from my original training by OpenAI being being the maker of GPT 4.0. The language model then goes through, runs through all of its gyrations, processing, managing it, blah, 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 summarizing it, coming up with a generative response, hands that back to the orchestrator, who then returns that back to the end user. Now, the trick with that is that sometimes this process is back and forth multiple times. It's trying to figure out things like, hey, I need additional data based on this, need additional data based on this. So maybe going back and forth. And when it does that, that's when you see, why is Copilot taking longer to respond? When I see those dots going across, this is the whole dance that's happening under the covers of why that's taking longer. So
back to our security conversation that we had in semantic index, what can we talk about, around the idea of, okay, well, we have that RAG pattern where we're using our semantic index that Microsoft has created that's secure in our own tenant with that information that I, as the prompter, have access to. What can we talk about in the sense of the security around the fact that, okay, well, it just took all this information that's private to my tenant and sent it to a large language model? Does that mean it's sending it out into the wild ether and now that large language model is training on my personal secure data?
Yeah. So basically, it's not training it on that model. So very good questions. The prompt, that the language model is not being trained on any of this data. So the language model is only getting the data on a per prompt basis that's coming from the semantic index or from other sources that we extend and make Copilot aware of. That's number one. Another thing that's interesting that is also secure. So stuff that the model is not getting smarter based on what's inside of my tenant. The index is getting more powerful with more content that's in there. And what we do see over time is that when this initially came out, the semantic index only contained a certain amount of content. So for example, if you put a really large document in a document library, we were only seeing the first 4 megs of the document. Now we're seeing the first 512 megs of the document. And of course, I say now, that was as of the Build conference in May of 2025. And right now it's late July. That could have changed. I wouldn't be surprised if that does change. And it's getting bigger and bigger all the time.
Right.
Another thing too is, so this isn't so much a security thing. Well, let's focus. So you asked about security. Let's focus on that side first. The other thing that it is doing on a secure side is that one of the aspects that's unique to Copilot's orchestrator is what's called responsible AI. And what that is that there are 4 different classifications and each one of them has different severity levels, that Microsoft is going to look at the prompt coming in and the prompt going back out to look for specific categories. They are violence, self-harm, sexual content, and hate speech. And if the prompt coming in meets any of those at the security level or at the severity level that the orchestrator deems, which is using an Azure AI service that's available to us or is available to developers, but Microsoft is using it for this. If you violate one of those rules, then the orchestrator is like, sorry, not going to do that. Can't do that. And if the model somehow generates content that's going to go back to the user, it's also scanned to say, is this okay to include as well? And it will go through and filter that stuff out if it deems it that.
Yeah, so basically it seems like what's happening is that when the prompt is going to the large language model, it's taking that content from your secure environment to send to the large language model, but as soon as the response is generated, then that transaction is sort of forgotten by the large language model. And so we're not compromising the content in our environment by using these large language models.
That's correct. Yeah, you nailed it. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think, is there anything else we wanted to say about this before I move on? Do you have any? Did you have any?
So I think that was the only.
Okay.
I just wanted to the reason I brought it up is I think there's a lot of people who are like, and why I keep bringing up the security is because the chatter I hear a lot is, well, that's just, you see these posts on Instagram by people who just don't know anything about it. And they're like, Microsoft is stealing all your information if you have Copilot turned on in Word, and here's how to turn it off so they're not stealing your information. It's like, guys.
A lot of fun.
Not really what's happening. So,
Right.
It's frustrating to see that kind of stuff being posted because it's making people who do not know any better scared. They're just, you know what I mean? It's not whatever. It's just frustrating.
It's
and
totally
there are
fair.
examples of things that probably do that. I don't have a lot of experience with a lot of tools outside of Copilot, so I don't want to speak broadly about them. Maybe you do and can speak to them, but I'm sure there's other ones that maybe that's the way they work. Like it's free, and so if you use it, it's kind of like Facebook and whatever kind of thing. But
I don't. I've heard different stories. I'm not going to sit there and throw them out right now because I'm going to forget who's who. But I think just the old adage of if it's free and you can't figure out what the product is, then it's you. You're the product.
Yeah.
So just be careful with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the last thing that usually comes up with this is like, okay, cool. So what are the limitations? What are some things that I should know about with this? How can I extend it? How can I create custom stuff? Now, I'm going to go over this in a very topical, high level piece because this is a much bigger discussion that we don't want to dive into today because I wouldn't be doing it justice today. One of the things is that that you will see, and there's so many caveats to this, but today the semantic index does not have access to all of your content in your organization. So a couple different examples of this. If you have a giant document inside of a document library or in OneDrive, you're probably not going to see all the content in it. Only the first part of it is going to be indexed. For example, if you have a Word doc that is 4 gigabytes large, you are only going to get the first 512 megs that is going to be indexed into the semantic index. So if you've got some rich content in the last 75% of that document, the semantic index is blind to that content. That will probably change over time, right? Those numbers and those capabilities will get bigger and bigger. They have been very quickly over the last year and a half, 2 years. So I would expect that we will continue to see that get bigger. Another very big limitation to this that a lot of people don't realize is your data that is in SharePoint and in OneDrive, the only content that is being indexed today are the documents and document libraries. None of the metadata with those documents, none of the data in SharePoint lists is being indexed. None of the data in SharePoint pages is being indexed. Now, again, Microsoft knows that. Microsoft has made comments or at least alluded to, we're working on that. But that is, and by the time you listen to this, by the time we stop recording, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden there's another announcement that says, hey, now we support this. And we talked about in more recent episodes that the context IQ thing, an improvement that was coming from the message center, implied that we were going to be starting to see metadata. And I was like, well, wait a minute, is that also list data? And that might be related to some of this too. So
I'm pretty sure if you go back and find that message center one, that timeline got moved out to January-ish. Last I heard. I didn't look it up personally. I just heard this through Mark Anderson, actually, I think mentioned it. So he was digging into it a little deeper. And I think he said, oh, they moved it to January. I don't know for sure, but it is definitely not as fully formed as was implied by that message center post originally.
Got it. Okay. So that's good. I mean, so that's an area, I guess this is a great example. This area of Copilot, it changes frequently. And so, and it also, like I said, there's a lot of caveats. Like I'll just to show you how crazy this really gets is that if you upload a document, if you're in Word, Copilot, the document that you have open, you have access to all of the content. But if the document lives in SharePoint and you aren't in Word Copilot, but you're asking Copilot in Teams, it's only going to see the first 512. And you're like, wait a minute, how do you keep track of this stuff? I'm like, you just have notes. You have notes.
Yeah. That's a really good, you sort of just gave everybody a really good sheet. Like if you know there's a document that you want to ask questions about, you are way better off opening that document and using Word's Copilot to ask it questions versus trying to use SharePoint's Copilot to ask it questions. So anyway. Think about like the different scenarios. So like think about different options you have to it. Can I get creative here? Can I be a little bit smarter than it is right now? You just have to, there's a lot of just trial and error with this stuff. It's it's AI. A very junior assistant.
It's a very junior assistant. You have to think in a creative way. Like, is there another way to approach this problem? You can't just take everything that you're doing right on face value because and just know that things change. I will tell you that this is one of the things that's one of the hardest for people in the industry of keeping up with all this stuff. That's why people like you and me keep jobs because we do keep up on top of this stuff. We do help our clients
try
stuff. And you're always trying. You're just constantly searching. I've got a bookmark list of a bunch of pages around docs and a couple different phrases that I always search for in the transcripts when Microsoft does Build or Ignite or one of those Wave whatever announcements. So, okay. So how can I go about extending this? If I want to make some changes to this, how does that work? So the way that you would end up doing this is there's essentially 3 different ways that you can go make some customizations to this. With Copilot, you can create things called custom agents. And an agent, think of it as like a scoped Copilot. There are 3 different areas that you can customize. You can customize the instructions, which means you add your own system instructions after Microsoft's system instructions before the user's instructions, the user prompt or human prompt. You can add additional knowledge to it, and you can do that using something called a Copilot connector. It used to be called a graph connector, Microsoft Graph Connector, where I ingest content using Microsoft Graph's API. That content will be queued for indexing, and then that gets shoved into the semantic index. And then the other option is creating actions, which is the ability to go get data real time from some third-party service, be that a CRM, sales service, stock service, whatever. There's basically 3 different tools that you can use to do this. If you are a low-code, no-code / maker person, Copilot Studio is one tool that you can use for this from the Power Platform side. It used to be called Power Virtual Agents. If you are inside of the Copilot app in Teams, you will see where all the other agents are, something called Agent Builder. Agent Builder is a lightweight version of Copilot Studio. Does not have all the same features that Copilot Studio has, but it does have the ability to create some agents on the fly. And then the third option is, there's 4 options, but the third option is using something called the Microsoft 365 Agents Toolkit, the ATK, to create a declarative agent, which is more of a developer / full stack developer / pro code, however you want to look at it. That is a way that we can create custom instructions, knowledge, and actions using JSON, YAML, and text files. So not really writing code. The REST API part would be writing code if it's custom, but that's another way that we can create our own agents. The nice thing is that however you create these to the end user, they don't know how they were created because they're just agents. So they're going to work in the Copilot app inside of Teams. They're going to work inside of the Copilot chat experience inside of m365.microsoft.cloud or cloud.microsoft. So I'm going to have to write that down and put that under my monitor. I'm always going to mix up that domain. The final option that we have that's available to us is something called a custom engine agent. And that is when you say, those limitations with the orchestrator and the way the semantic index works, I don't like that. I need more control. Or I don't like the fact that you're using GPT-4o or that your configuration of it is done a certain way. Maybe I want to have a different configuration that is has the temperature dial way down because we're in the science or the financial services place. I need more stuff that is more predictable and not as creative prompts. If you want to go that route, you essentially say, I'm going to build an agent that's going to leverage my own model. I'm going to use my own orchestrator, which there's a bunch of orchestrators you can use that are on the market. Semantic kernel is one. Llama Index is one. LangChain, very popular one, is also out there. There's a bunch of the ones that are out there. This is the way, when you do it this way, you're not going to use the Copilot stack that we've gone through. Instead, you're going to build your own AI application, and you're going to, as the developer or the provider of the agent, you're going to incur the cost for the model, hosting the orchestrator, all those different knowledge sources, RAG, all that stuff that you want to implement. If you go that route, though, your users it's more work on your side as the developer, but from the user's point of view, they don't need a Copilot license to be able to use your agent because it's not part of the Copilot stack. So you don't need that all-you-can-eat license. So there's a lot more to go into this, but I just want to give that bit of a high level to it right there.
Do you want to give a definition for Azure AI Foundry and where it sort of fits in here, just as a definition? I know it goes deep, so I'm not trying to say go deep, but maybe define it and put it in the list of things.
It's something I do want to go over deeper down the road in one of our episodes, but think of Azure AI Foundry as Microsoft's one-stop shop for all of your AI needs from Microsoft. So it allows you to create like an AI project. That project can have different pieces to go along with it, like different models different model deployments can go inside of one project. You can have different moderation configurations. So as I said earlier, the Copilot one has those different 4 different categories with the different severity levels. Maybe I want to have different severity levels for my specific agent. So I can use the moderator from that. I can use my own Azure AI search index. My own Azure AI search resource to create my own vector database, AKA my own semantic index that I want to end up querying. Microsoft's Azure AI Foundry, you can think of this as their hosted orchestrator in a sense. Okay. It would compete with other offerings from AWS. Their product is Bedrock, or Google, which theirs is, I believe it's called Vertex. Yep. So those are other hosted options there. One of the big benefits to Azure AI Foundry is that you can leverage different language models in your application, but they are hosted and run on Azure. Yeah. And when you create the deployment, it is just for your project. It is not for anything. Like nobody else could use it. So if I created an agent that was going to use GPT-4o Mini, but using it from OpenAI, I'm using the same model and the same instance of that model that the rest of the world is using from a programmatic stance. Yep. If I do it over on the Azure side, I'm paying more for it, but I'm also creating a deployment that only my project is using that nobody else can access. So it's very specific and it's not going to bleed that information outside.
That's where I was going with it. Sort of, I wanted you to address it because that's that privacy thing that I think I've been trying to tie a string around the whole way. So if that's a concern for you, then sort of looking at Azure AI Foundry might be a good option for sort of creating your own very private sort of viewpoint on that. The other thing that I was thinking about that maybe you wanted to quickly address was the idea around using Microsoft's semantic index if you're building your own custom engine agent, and sort of what that is around how do you get a semantic index if you're building your own custom engine agent, and then is there a way to use that semantic index in your own custom engine?
Yeah. So I'll answer it right now. Something I definitely want to go into more a little bit later. So one of the interesting aspects about the semantic index is that the only way that it gets created and gets populated on a tenant is if you have at least one of those Microsoft 365 Copilot all-you-can-eat licenses. So the $30 per user per month for the 12-month commitment.
Yep.
That's the only way you're going to get one of those is if you have that license. So you will have to have one of those. Now, on your custom engine agent, can I get access to the content inside of the semantic index? And the answer is yes. And I'm going to put that with like a YEEEEESSS ... in italics. We're in different stages of GA/public preview/private preview of a couple different Copilot APIs that'll be exposed via the Microsoft Graph. There is a retrieval API where I can essentially make the exact same call, making a request to the semantic index that Copilot is making, Copilot's orchestrator is making to the semantic index. So I can make that call and get the responses back from the semantic index using that retrieval API. There's another one called the chat API that will allow me to essentially send a prompt to Copilot programmatically, let Copilot use the entire Copilot stack and orchestrator, knowledge sources, and language model to do a generative response, and then give that back to my application. So that would be a way that, hey, I want to do a custom UI around Copilot. Okay, cool. You could do that using the chat experience. But if you say, no, I really would want to get the data back from the semantic index, then it's like, well, I would use the retrieval API. There's a couple of other Copilot APIs that are available to us as well that we can take advantage of, like getting data from, like when you see if you're using like Copilot or Teams Premium, where it does like the meeting transcripts and the AI generated notes and all that stuff. If you want to get access to those resources, there are Copilot APIs for those as well. The part that I didn't want to dive too deep into it just yet is that, again, they are in different stages of private preview, public preview, and GA.
Yep.
And the licensing for those is also fluid.
Yeah, that's a good word. Fluid.
If you look at don't take my word at this right now. I'm not being incorrect when I say it, but in the documentation, they say you need a Copilot license to be able to access these APIs. So the person making the request has to be with your agent, has to authenticate using a delegated permission, and that user has to have that license applied to them. However, they said at the build, two people from Microsoft said at the build conference, these were also going to be metered APIs. I can't say how I know this, but through the grapevine and talking to someone who talked to one of the program managers as well, they confirmed that by GA, the goal is to make sure that some of these are available as metered APIs, which means that you would pay per use and you don't have to have a license. I got a lot of questions about that. Like, well, what if like I have 10 users and 7 of them have a Copilot all-you-can-eat license and 3 of them don't? Are 3 of them going to be metered and 7 of them are all-you-can-eat? I don't have to pay for those. So those are unanswered questions. Yeah. So
just figured we should touch on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to drop a link to an article I wrote recently on like how does Copilot work with some visualizations to all this, and also like a scenario of like, here's how you can think about it in terms of like if you're building something, how it works under the covers. If you want to walk through that, but I'll put that in the show notes in case anybody's interested.
Cool.
Sound good?
Awesome. Great overview.
Okay. Are you ready to do some picks?
Yes. Let's go.
All right, Julie, because I hosted this, I want you to talk some.
First. Yep.
So I'll let you share ours.
Well, I sort of alluded to it at the beginning of the program when I said that my son attended a Roblox gaming development camp. This is his second year going, and it's this year he did it overnight, which was really fun. It's the one that's really close to us is in Manchester, New Hampshire, the Southern New Hampshire University. So essentially he goes to Southern New Hampshire University. They have like a really cool like tech campus building that's all, set up for high tech stuff. And like they put him up in one of the new dorms. So he had like a solo dorm room to himself. Like it was like sending him to college. It felt very surreal to send an almost 13-year-old to college for the day. But anyway, it was so very cool. And what I have been super, super, super impressed with this camp. This, like I said, it's the second year he's gone. They, at least for us, since we're in New England, and I find it sort of ironic to a certain level, Evan, my son's name is Evan, has had 2 instructors. They hire college students that are in the CS sort of area to teach these classes to the kids. And both of my son's instructors in both years have been WPI students. And I went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute and graduated from there. So I'm like, what's really fun too, though, is being there and being like, talking to these instructors and like, you went to WPI? Oh my God. Like they're just like, kind of like, oh, and I'm like, okay, this is a little surreal, but cool at the same time. I can geek out with you. This is what I did when I was on campus. So anyway, it's really cool. I just wanted to sort of give them a little bit of a plug. They have camps for ages 7 through 17. And, like BattleBots camp, game design with Minecraft, Roblox, design and coding, Java coding, game design with Unreal Engine. That's for the upper ages, like 13 to 17. And they also do a Python camp for coding and AI development for ages 13 through 17. So if you've got a kid that's at all interested in the tech, I think what I also really love about this is that for those kids who don't want to go to sports camps in the summer or the traditional sort of like go to a lake or a whatever and that kind of camp, it's not for them. I felt like there was nothing for Evan to do. You know what I mean? Like he goes to a sort of a traditional day camp in the summertime and, he hangs out with kids and it's fun and he's doing sort of a leader and training thing. That's great. But this is so what he loves, right? He sort of takes after his mom. He loves being on his computer. He loves learning about, this stuff. He's very into the game design right now and like learning how to like build the games. So it's very much him. They have locations all over the United States. I only a few sort of in the middle, but all the major cities have presence. There is even presence at MIT. Like you can go to MIT to do these things. So it's just a really cool thing if you've got kids in the 7 to 17 age range that are into this kind of thing. I mean, Evan said it was the best experience of his entire life. Like he loves it. So granted, his life is very short at this point, but it says something, it says something that, they all the instructors have their code names. So they don't even know their real name till the last day. Like they go by code names. So it's just geared towards that group of younger people who like live in that sort of space where everybody has like a code name and the sort of, have their YouTube channels or whatever. It's that kind of vibe. And it just really resonates with him and makes him he made 4 brand new friends, like just this time alone, so fairly cool. So I recommend it. I'll put a link to the ID Tech camp in the show notes. So
that's awesome. I see Cambridge, Palo Alto, New York City, Princeton, Coral Gables, Irvine, Edison, Middleton, Seattle, Santa Clara.
So in the Northeast and the West Coast for sure. But some in the middle.
Yeah. Lots of really good schools here. Santa Clara, University of Washington, Northwestern, UC Irvine, University of Miami, Princeton, NYU, Stanford, MIT. This is awesome. It sounds very similar to the thing my daughter did a couple of weeks ago. She did this thing called they're called pre-college career camps at the NSLC, National Student Leadership Conference. So nslcleaders.org. Similar to this, going for an entire week, cybersecurity, engineering, artificial intelligence, biotech, architecture, aerospace, interior design, just tons of different fashion management design, tons of these different things. So it's cool. Yeah. Better than just like the sports camp or let's just go have fun type stuff.
Yeah. Which is not great.
Better, different.
It gives an outlet, I think, for the kids. Like my son could give a flying fig about going to sports camp. I mean, he plays baseball and stuff, but he doesn't love it. It's not what he loves. So to give him a camp in the summer where he gets to go immerse himself in the thing that he loves, I think is what made that so special for him. So.
That's awesome. That's great. That's really cool to hear. I didn't know about that.
No.
Good find. I'll throw the link to I'm going to do 2 links, but the one that I just mentioned, I'll throw this one of mine, but that's not my feature one I want to focus on this week.
Yeah.
Okay. The one that I was going to mention is Claude Code.
Good.
I'm not God, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm not a big fan of this whole like vibe coding thing.
Oh God.
And
did I roll my eyes on camera? I think I did. Go ahead.
I think they're on the floor right now. So you might good. Jump back and grab those. I don't want to go off on a tangent on that, but I'm absolutely loving Claude Code. So I use it as like a sidecar to when I'm doing dev in VS Code. And I use it not to like do the coding for me. I do it to really just kind of make myself more productive. So like a scenario of how I'm using this is that I have my site's based on Hugo and I use Tailwind and that as well. I have different contexts that I've created with this. I wanted to go through and have standardized format to the top of every single one we have these things called partials and shortcodes where it's like reusable templates or sub templates inside of my content. So shortcode, you use that in your markdown content.
Yep.
Partials, you use that in your templates.
Yep.
I defined what I wanted the top part to look like. I want everything to be documented this way. I want to go through and have a section where I pull out the parameters that are passed into local variables. And then I want to do a standard validation to it to make sure that if something wasn't passed in that I was expecting, or I'm missing a required parameter, I want to write my error messages or my warnings on the console a certain way so that I don't just get this error stack that I'm having to figure out what does this mean, right? And trying to figure that stuff out. I went to Claude Code. This is a task that I've been working on like off and on for the last few months. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's go through and let's try this. So I used it to essentially say, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to walk through every single file in this folder and all the subfiles. And I want you to make sure that all of them have this same structure at the top, then this structure, but don't modify the bottom of the body of the actual template. Tears through it. Of course, just like everything AI, had to go through and have some conversations about it. Nope, that's not right. Nope, this isn't right. Or you have a build error. Help me identify where this is and what the problem's going on and watch it just go to town. I absolutely love this. It's definitely making me more productive. It's not replacing my job. It's allowing me to focus more on like what I need to get done and taking out some of the more busy work and repetitive stuff that's stuff that I would normally go outsource to another developer. Is super cool in terms of like how you can extend it using MCPs. I have it going through and creating stuff in Notion for me with a Notion MCP server. It can read stuff from GitHub with the GitHub MCP server. Just so much cool stuff with it. So I'm a big fan of it. I like it a lot more than GitHub's Copilot. Just to show, I mean, I pay for it. So that's a big difference.
Yeah. No, 100%. I do use GitHub Copilot. I started using the Sonnet 4 model in GitHub Copilot, and I similarly use it as a helper like that. Like I've been running a bunch of, writing an API for a project that I'm working on, so I needed my own custom API. And similarly, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sick of rewriting these status errors that I needed to return for all the different scenarios. They're just standard scenarios. Like I have my baseline code, but I need all the code that just goes, oh, if this isn't validated right, check this and return to this error. And if this isn't right, return to this error. And with a really simple prompt, I got it to go clean up every single like function input to clean up all my status errors and make them all look exactly the same and handle all the same errors. Like that's just busy work that I didn't need to go like research. Okay, what are each one? Make sure I get okay, that's a 400. Okay, that one's a 500. Okay, that's a this, that's a all of those, right? Like, and it just like, and then I'm like, oh no, it's missing one. Okay. All right, there's the template. Okay, now AI, go figure it, make every other one look exactly the same. And it just, and I was like, oh, well, that was good. Thanks.
And I'm sure
4 hours later, I'm, still working at it.
But once you have it set up, then it's going to make your life easier when you walk back to it. So
I would have been 4 hours later still working on it. And within like 10, 15 minutes, it was all done. So yeah, it's definitely made me more productive.
I'm sure that some of these tools have a lot of the same kind of things to them. One of the things, and so what I'm about to say for Claude is probably going to be something that ChatGPT has, or Cursor has, or Windsurf has, or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
But one of the things I love about it is that for your project, you have a Claude MD file that you add to the root of your project. And when you call like a init, it understands like, let me walk through your project and let me deduce everything I can learn about it. And I'm going to put it in the Claude MD file. You can then add additional stuff to it. So for me, when I told it saying like, hey, when it's a Hugo specific question, make sure you go read the Hugo MD file, which are my rules, how I use Hugo, or the Tailwind MD file, which is my rules, how I use Tailwind, so that it has context about the project. So for yours, you can say like, here's the context for how I do all my standard errors. And now when you go ask it a question, if you were using Claude, it would automatically go read that that Claude MD file as part of the system prompt. And then from there on, I wouldn't have to worry about saying like, make sure you use my standard errors, all that kind of stuff. So it would have those instructions. So these tools they're super useful. It's just not hey, go build everything for me. It's like, that's the part
that's bothering me still. Yeah. I'm right there with you, but I am finding that they are being helpful, good assistants for those repetitive, annoying tasks, like fixing up JSON files that you copy paste from somebody else, but now you have it in a file, so you need quotes around everything. Go fix that.
Yep. I hear you. Awesome. That's everything I got today. How about you?
That's all I got.
Yeah. Well,
Great episode.
That was more than I intended. I'm sure glad we didn't do the news today like we have in the past. I guess longer episode, but awesome. Well, everybody, by the time you hear this, we will have another show coming out soon. Julie and I will both be in Atlanta for the TechCon 365 conference the week of, I think it's August 11th. Am I right?
Yes. Yep. Now you
August
got it
11th.
right.
So make sure that if you're there, you're going to be in Atlanta, you listen to the show, reach out to Julie and I, however you see fit, reach out to us so that we can connect and just reach out so we can connect. Love to do that. Awesome. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Andrew.
Did you like this episode? Please like and share it with your friends. We're on YouTube, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. You'll find all the links in the video description below. And if you have a question, head over to our site at codedeploygo.live, where you can send it in. Also, sign up for our mailing list on our site at codedeploygo.live to learn about future episodes, opportunities for listeners, and get the show notes from each episode sent straight to your inbox. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.